Welcome back to another episode of the Cheeky Midweeky, where we are making strength and conditioning not boring anymore. Before we get into today's episode, hit that subscribe button so you're notified about when more content comes from us. In today's episode, I am joined by Coach Stephen Thompson, where we talk about how he is training high school athletes in one of the most unique ways in empowering them to continue to train. I don't want to give it away, right? That's why I can't be saying it right now. You need to listen to this episode to find out what he's doing and how it is very unique down in the high school setting and how he's able to help these kids out. It is a very servant way of living your life, and you're going to want to be doing something similar. So this is episode, I think, 7 or 8 into this high school highlight that Ross had started. So appreciate you coming on and being able to talk with you about what you do in the day-to-day life of high school strength and conditioning.
I appreciate you having me on. It's quite the honor.
Appreciate it, man. What has been one of the questions that I've been asking everybody, and I'll just start with it now, is what has been your biggest aha moment in the last 1, 3, 5, 10, like the thing that you're like, man, if I would have known this earlier, I want to tell everybody this now. What is that?
This could go a couple different directions. So I'll hit it with my personal aha moment first. I originally set this up. We have a free gym. We're in small America. We're south of Kansas City, about an hour, just a very small community. COVID shut down the gyms. I brought some kids in just to work out, have workout partners, be around people. And we're hitting a workout, and one of my guys, he was doing something, and I turned around and I was like, what are you doing? And I'm on the phone. And I'm like, I get that. Who are you talking to? He's like, a coach. And he's a very good wrestler. And I'm like, your comp coach, who are you talking to? And he said, no, Oregon State. We're in nowhere, Missouri. And this kid's he was the Stanford wrestling coach, and then he went to Oregon State when Stanford cut their programs. And so he was talking to him. That was a very aha moment for me. While I'm out here lifting weights and having fun, this kid's got his whole life based on what we're doing here to try to help him reach his goals. And if I don't take this as serious as he is, I'm going to let him down. And who wants to be the guy that lets somebody down when they're chasing their dreams? That was the biggest aha moment that I had.
And that'll tighten you up in terms of, this, like, our actions, anybody listening to like our actions and what we do for these athletes, like that is you got to take what you're doing seriously.
Yes. It was all fun and games until he's made that comment. And then I have to be the best I can be for him or what other athlete may come in here. I've got some more in here now that are chasing big time dreams. And if I'm not up talking to coaches, reevaluating our program and putting them down a path to be successful, ultimately I'll be the one at the end of my life questioning the decisions I made.
Man, what are some of the big rocks of your training program then to make sure that you're doing the best for these athletes as they come in?
I started out, obviously you learn and you figure out what's going to work the best for you. We started with the basic 5-3-1 kind of a conjugate program. And we didn't deviate too much from that. We did add in some dynamic days, and that seemed to work well. But then as the programs evolved, we've added a lot of sprinting in, a lot of jumping, tracking the jumps to make sure that our progress is doing what the athletes need it to do, and trying to make a more all-around athlete where strength isn't the sole thing we're chasing. We're chasing multiple avenues to get them where they need to be. And that's what we've adapted so far, and how to balance that. You've only got so much time with them. So we hit our main barbell lifts. We try to get that done. And then we move right into a plyo lift or a plyo movement. And then maybe something that's really fast. We're trying to hit the whole strength curve in one session. That's probably my big rocks.
Yeah, that can be, like you said, difficult to make sure that you're doing all those different and hitting it and trying to do the best for the athlete within the constraints of whatever you're dealt with.
And then they're all playing sports. So you have to evaluate when they walk in, are they prepared for today's workout, or are we going to have to modify it for where they are? Sometimes kids walk in and they're just trashed. You have them hit a couple warm-ups, you talk to them, you keep that relationship, the line of communications open, and then just, hey, man, go home, eat, chill out tonight. There'll be another training day tomorrow, and then we'll back off and try to let them recover.
You're not the first coach that said that about the training and doing a lot of different sessions. What have you seen the growth of different travel ball, different engagements and responsibilities that athletes have? Because it's, on one hand, it's good because they don't have the opportunity to get in trouble and do some of the things that maybe older generation where it's like, hey, there's nothing going on. Let's go in the woods and just do some random dumb stuff. But at the same time, they don't have the opportunity to go and learn and explore. What have you seen with respect to that evolution and that dichotomy?
We raised a girl in that environment, actually two. One went on to play college softball. And looking back on it now, I often question, did we rob her of some experience that would have given her more in the ways of dealing with life? I think sports help with that a lot, but I also think that getting away from the baseball diamond, softball diamond helps tremendously. So while we're pushing them at this technical model, I deal with a lot of athletes that the first thing that gets cut is their training in the gym.
Really?
For a practice, for a scrimmage, for whatever the case may be with their other sport. I get all that. You have to practice the technical side, but you're not where you need to be to achieve the goals you need to achieve. And a lot of that can be directly related back to strength, conditioning, things like that. Your skills through the roof, but your strength in your jumps is down, or your ability to cover the court quickly may not be there. Trying to find that balance that competition sports sometimes don't allow is very tough.
It's interesting you say that, because I was thinking about my conversation with Coach Bill Gillespie when we were flying down to coaches conference, and he was talking about almost the opposite of that, where he's, listen, if you give me somebody that sucks at bowling and they're weak, and then you give them to me, and now I get them stronger and whatever other thing, but they still suck at bowling, they're not going to be better at bowling the ball and making the pins fall down. And I tried to explain that to the baseball coaches or the football coaches, like, they still have to be good at their sport, because if they're not skilled at what they're doing, then there's only so much I can do. Get CEUs faster, cheaper, and more convenient than ever before with Strength Coach Network. Hey, it's Justin, here to tell you about how Strength Coach Network can now help you out with our premium membership and CEUs to the NSCA and CSCCa. Upon signing up for our premium membership, you will get 2.0 or 10 CEUs immediately. That is an entire year's worth of CEUs that you are able to access from the convenience of your office. No traveling for conferences, no waiting on flights, no eating out, no expensive hotels. Just the good stuff from great coaches. Now, if you need extra CEUs for past years during the reporting period, we can bundle Fundamentals 1 or 2, which also come with 2.0 or 10 CEUs to your purchase. That way you're able to take care of your CEUs for the best price, most convenient, and learn from some of the best coaches. If you want more help with this, email us at service@Strength Coach Network or visit us at strengthcoachnetwork.com, and I would be delighted to help you out. Do you feel that your situation that you talked about is more common nowadays than the athlete that's actually bad at their sport?
Well, that's two different things. And I definitely wouldn't go against Coach Gillespie on anything he says. What he says is right. If you're a horrible volleyball player, technical is where your model needs to be. Yeah. But a lot of these athletes are playing at a very high level. We're not talking about being bad at their sport. We're talking about they're very good at their sport. But what's lacking may not be developed in the arena. It may have to be developed off to the side.
And they just don't want to. They're almost like, I don't want to. Like, if the thing that's going to take me where I want to go is my sport, like, I got to spend all that time doing it, right?
I think it gets beat into their head constantly. That's when they get sent out to do things to prepare for their sport. It's hitting or all the other things, which have to be done. I get that. We just have to find a balance somewhere where we can prepare the athlete for what the season's going to bring. And if they never step away and just take a little bit of time, even a couple of days a week. I'm not asking to give up the competition practices or anything like that, but trying to find time is going to be very important. The college model says you're going to find time. So at some point you have to learn to prepare for that as a high school athlete.
What do you think's better for that high school athlete, to have playing different sports in the different seasons, or just the different seasons within that one competitive sport?
I think anytime you can get a mix is going to help the athlete overall in body awareness, getting away from the sport just a little bit, even if it's just a mental refresh. There's a lot of pressure on these high school kids that sometimes we're not aware of, and they're heaping all of this on them and they're not talking about it, where if they could step away just for a little bit, stay active, try a different sport, they may come back to it stronger. But in the model we live in now, recruiting is so heavily based on competition sports that they're scared to step away because they don't want to lose that opportunity to be picked up by whatever school it is that they're wanting to go to.
Speaking of recruiting, have you been involved in any of the recruiting? Because some of our high school coaches are like, yeah, like the recruiters, they come in and they want to ask these questions. They want to know what is Johnny, what is Jill like in the weight room? And they ask those questions. Other ones are like, not so much. The parents might ask me to send some information to this college. What have you noticed, or let's just start with, are you involved at all? And how does that look? And what are some kind of piece of advice that you'd give to coaches that might be in a similar boat?
I'm as involved as the athlete wants me to be as far as that goes. They will come and they'll ask you for advice. They'll ask you for email templates. They'll ask you what coaches to send. What coaches am I talking to help them once they reach out. I won't contact a coach or have a coach, or I'll talk to a coach if they get a hold of me, but I'm not going to do anything without the athlete coming to me saying, hey, this is what I want to do. I need help. And what I noticed from the recruiting standpoint is we play a lot of these competition sports and we do a lot of these things, but the recruiting knowledge isn't there when you start talking to parents. They don't know what to do. They're a little behind in my area, not everywhere. I can't speak for everywhere, but in my area. And then they wait too late. Then all of a sudden it's a scramble junior or senior year to try to find the school they want to go to just because they weren't as up on the process as what they should have been.
What I heard from one of the coaches too is like these smaller group of five, whatever you want to call those schools, mid-majors, they're like, hey, they're embracing this whole notion of being a JUCO where it's come be with us for 2 years, get some tape, be ready to go, and up and project to that next round. Like that is that kind of model that schools are going with nowadays.
And especially around here, it's a lot of smaller universities. We have Mizzou, but that's about 3 hours away. KU's probably a couple hours away, and then K-State's even further than that. Nebraska's 4, Iowa's 4-ish.
Yeah.
So you're gonna go D2. There's quite a few JUCOs. You can go that route. NAIA, there's quite a few schools around there. So most of the colleges that these kids are dealing with are a smaller university where they can get in and get some tape.
How far are you from Lindenwood?
That's on the other side of the state. So that would be south of St. Louis. Okay. Or it might actually be north of St. Louis. I'm not super familiar with that side. So we're going to be 4.5 hours-ish because Kansas City to St. Louis is a little bit of a drive.
Yeah, no, I'm bad at my geography, but I'm just trying to, we had one of our former interns that went out there during his first stint in getting into strength and conditioning, but I just knew that was one of the different universities that kids can go and get an opportunity to go get some tape.
Yes, and they've recruited some kids from over this direction, wrestling, and I know they added some programs. It seems not long ago they went D1.
Yeah, not too long ago.
Yeah, and so when they did that, they were looking for some baseball players. They were looking for some softball players to try to get a team fielded.
Talking about when athletes start training, how young is too young in your opinion? Because I get asked that, right? Oh, I got so, and it's my answer is it always depends. What are some of the things that you've been talking with parents, or any concerns that you get from parents that maybe it is too young for their kid to be in some version of organized training?
It depends what you decide is training. And if it's one of them deals, if they don't have their gym shoes on, they don't have their shorts on, they don't have their tank top on, we're not training. Well, anytime they're outside doing anything, it's some form of training.
Yep.
If they're playing, being active, we just don't look at it that way. So they can, in my opinion, you can start them pretty young if you're looking at a model that's not trying to bury them and just let them explore what it's like to train. They don't even have to know they're training. We used to do it through games and all this different things when me and you were coming up. I'm sure we didn't look at dodgeball as any specific training. We were just having fun. But in the grand scheme of things, what is it? You're perfecting body movements. Yeah. And then you could coach that as much as you wanted. Now, weights are obviously going to differ a little bit. I don't know that there's a certain point that you should put a kid under a load, but how big of a load do you need to put them under? I don't think it's much. And then to let them grow into that model of whatever it is they want to be. It comes down to the kid. What are they mature enough to handle as far as inside of a weight room conditioning setting? That may have to be adapted.
What's up, everybody? Taking a quick break from the show to talk about one of our sponsors, TeamBuildr. I've been using TeamBuildr since 2019 when I was at Thompson. I still use it with my remote athletes. I also use it at Goldfinch, which is the private sector gym I train at, and we use it at Centennial, which is the high school that I'm working at. Now, if you're printing on lift cards because you say, oh, I can't afford TeamBuildr, guess what? TeamBuildr has a pre-written grant that you can locate on their website. You simply change the name of you, your organization, and the areas that they highlighted, and they can help you get TeamBuildr at your facility, your university, whatever it is, so that way you can optimize how you train your athletes with this software. Now, TeamBuildr is also a part owner in the Plyomat. The Plyomat is something that I utilize at Goldfinch, and it helps you be able to see how high somebody jumped, the ground contact time, and RSI. You can get all that conveniently right there. You can reach out to your rep from TeamBuildr to be able to get more information on the Plyomat. It's fast, it's reliable, it's convenient, and it's trusted by coaches worldwide. Check them out as well as TeamBuildr in the link down below.
If they can't be in a group and work in a group without losing focus or doing stuff that's going to get them hurt. So like you said, it depends. The variables are so huge that it's hard to say indefinitely when a kid can start inside of organized training.
Yeah, and that's the thing where like parents, listen, hey, you just said it, when you let, Johnny or whatever, they go on the basketball court to go shoot with their friends, like they're sprinting, they're jumping, they go, and if you actually watch what kids do on a playground, they run off this and they land and they run. It's like, that's an altitude landing almost on a single leg if you just watch what they do. And so if you're really smart and really intentional and you're not just, like you said, militaristic, bar on back, squat to the ground. Yeah, you can get kids in these groups. So that way, when you do work, I had a coach on just talking about how what he's been able to do in the middle school, because he's in charge of it. It helps set up what happens in the high school, and then kicking the kids off into college. Like, you're almost in that academy setting of what happens over in Europe if you pay attention to what's going on in other parts of the world.
Yeah, you're developing a really long-term athletic development plan. And depending how quickly you have the access and how you program that, you get to see what the outcome is when you follow a kid through kindergarten through 12th grade.
And it's like, do you think that's part of the reason why coaches are getting really interested in high school? Because I think they realize nowadays that they can get back to that long-term athletic developmental model, or that's why like the Ivy Leagues or Division threes, where it's not, the movement isn't happening as much in those like purists that really did just love that model. Hey man, like, we're going to work together for 4 years and we're just going to develop you. And I get to watch you go from, it was just pure joy that I remembered those kids when I first got in at 2018 and seeing in 2022 graduating, hey, the development that they're still going through. Like, I think coaches really want to see that. And I think that's what's pushing them to the high school setting.
I think that could be some of it. I think there's other factors as well. I think the high pressures of coaching at the next level sometimes get to be a little bit much, the stability. And then now you're watching athletes come and go, and you never get to see a product that you helped develop. So the high school setting would allow a lot of room to change ideas. You got a lot more freedom to try out some things, and then you get to see how it progresses through your athletes, plus the relationships you build and the community you build. There's a lot to be said about working with high school students and what you're able to do, because the business doesn't influence the product.
Yeah, and that's where it just gets down to, again, like for a lot of us, why we got into it. Somebody positively impacted our lives, and now we have the opportunity to do the same for other guys and girls that we're working with.
And that can't be understated. When you know what your goal in life is or your mission in life is, what better place to start than a high school setting?
Amen. So any of our listeners that are not familiar, you have your own podcast and you're continuing to learn and talk with coaches. What have you learned? First of all, what started the podcast journey for you? But then second of all, people doing a little bit of research, having Nate Harvey on recently, Johnny Parker, like coaches, and doing a lot of learning. What has been some of the biggest learning things that you've had on your own show?
All right. So how it got started, and I talked about it a little bit in the past, but I was asked to do prepcasts for the local football team, and that kind of started the ball rolling. I had not experienced a whole lot of technology. I'm not going to lie. I could barely turn a computer on when I started this, but they asked me to do this. And through that, I thought, why wouldn't we do a podcast for athletes and just see how it goes? Bring a couple athletes in, feed them some breakfast, ask them a few questions. The newspaper locally doesn't exist like it used to. There's a disconnect between maybe some of the people in the community and the athletes. This could help bridge that gap. That's how it started. So in the original episodes, it's just high school kids, high school football players that come in. We had a little bit of fun. We cooked breakfast, got to know them a little bit, threw them some questions that I had. I had an athletic questionnaire that I had built that was based off never split the difference. So it was 6 questions. And then so I would integrate that in the podcast and then ask them as we talk through. That obviously is not going to last forever. You only have so many athletes in a town of 1,600. I'm trying to get other towns in. They really weren't interested. So that led to some coaches that led to other coaches. And then slowly it's built into something where I've had some guests on that I look back and I'm like, why in the world did they want to do my show? It's been really rewarding to try to put a product out every week that coaches like, listen to, with great guests that they can learn something from.
As you've been, like, what was some of those initial conversations with high school athletes? What were the things that they were saying that you were most taken aback by?
They were pretty relaxed, but when you got into the nuts and bolts of it all, nobody had instilled any direction in them. Nobody had ever got them point blank and asked them, like, where are we going with this? You know, is it just to have fun? Do you have bigger goals? When all this is over, what do you want to accomplish? And then that might be a bigger subject, but when you start breaking it down to what is your hardest daily struggle? I should have brought one in, and then I could have just read the questions off, and then you would have got an idea. But what's holding you back from being the athlete you want to be? Different things like that maybe they haven't ever sat down and thought about and didn't really have an answer for. And as adults, maybe we don't have those answers, but to get them to reflect, then we can start opening a conversation and then building a relationship that maybe we wouldn't have had prior to that.
What has been one of the best from that bonding and having good relationships with your athletes? Because I know we all have those examples of, man, this athlete, I have a newspaper article right here from Jesus Gibbs, like that type of a relationship. What were some of the commonalities between those best relationships that you've had? Because success leaves clues, and that way our listeners can learn from you with it.
So relating all of those relationships together, the athletes that I probably connected with the most were hard workers that knew where they were going. And when they came in, if something was programmed or the workout was a little different than what they thought it should be, they were asking. They wanted to know. They wanted to know why we were doing what we were doing, not to question it.
What's up, everybody? Taking a quick break from the show to talk about one of our sponsors, Hawkin Dynamics. I've been using Hawkin Dynamics ever since I was at Thompson. Still utilize it today when I'm at the private sector at Goldfinch. Even brought the plates from Goldfinch over to Centennial to do some force plate testing with the football team there. We've done force plate testing with other high school athletes. It is something that you need to get. If you want more help with it about how to practically use it and you want to reach out to us, feel free to reach out to us at service@strengthcoachnetwork.com. Not only do I utilize it with lower body assessments, I use it with upper body assessments, plyo push-ups, prone Y assessments. You can also utilize it for what I call an upper body metric mid-thigh pull, where essentially you're doing a push-up at the strongest range and you're pushing into an immovable force, so a barbell, same way you do an isometric mid-thigh pull. Like I said, been using them for years. Valid, reliable. The customer service is fantastic. Go check out Hawkin Dynamic in the link down below, and you will not be disappointed.
Much as, hey, let's figure out what is best to get there. That opens up more questions. And all of a sudden you've built a relationship of back and forth because they were interested in what you were doing for them, but also what their goals were. And the high level athletes, the athletes that really want more, it seems to me they're the easiest to build relationships with.
How do you then take the athlete that maybe doesn't want to? Because I've worked with them, and again, I know there's always that third, right? Third athletes, you can do whatever you ask them to do. Third are going to be like, hey, this is stupid, I don't want to do it. It's that middle third, and how do you affect them? What have been some of your strategies to pull them along and to get them to want to do more and to be like the easier athletes to work with, so that way you can have a greater effect on the entire culture of a team?
I think some of it is what you said. When you establish a culture, that helps bring those kids along. That's what I've noticed here. Some of them will come out here and they'll put their toes in the water and see if they like it. I understand by watching them where they're at. They're not bought into this at all. So I'll give them the room to work, and then I'll try to have conversations about why we're doing what we're doing and how this could help, how this could affect this. How can we bring you along to where you want to be? And then give them the room to try it out. And then see their measurements change, see their body change, see what happens. That seems to be effective for me. If I push them too hard, you know you're going to lose them. But if I don't push them enough, then they don't think you care about them. So they're not bought in at all. So you got to find that middle ground, and then you got to find the athletes around them almost have to do the same thing. They can't push them, but you matter. And I think that's a cultural build that just takes time.
One of the things that I thought of as you were talking right there was like even something as simple for us as we had to get the kids to understand you got to wear shoes when you train. Like you can't wear slides, you can't wear the hey dudes. I didn't even know what that word, but like that right there. And the reason I'm bringing it up is that was pushing them and getting them out of their comfort zone. Like, wait a minute, I can't just wear these when I go to train. No, if I'm asking you to sprint and you're barely trying to keep your slides on, you're not sprinting. Like we need you to wear shoes. We need you to do these things so we can get the stimulus and get the output that we want from you with these exercises that we're trying to do.
Let me take that as an example back to what I've noticed here. Jumps. Any plyometric exercise for some of those kids, they will avoid at all cost.
Really?
They don't feel athletic. They don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to be shown up. You have to take a lot of time to get them to start jumping. And then anything they do correlated with a broad jump, a vertical jump, whatever it may be, that has to be a big deal. The growth has to be a big deal for you as a coach. Just because you have a kid over here broad jumping 112 inches doesn't mean that's the standard. But the kid that come from a 40-inch broad jump to a 65-inch broad jump, that has to be treated the same way. And then you get them to jump more. And then I think that carries over to the field so much more. So you have to find them spots that they hide and don't want to participate and then make that more accessible to them where they don't feel like they're being judged because their jump isn't as big as player B. I don't know why that's
I was going to say, do you think that's from being in a small town like you said, or is that just the current generation of athlete in circa 2025?
It would be hard to say that definitely, but I don't know that my kids think too much different than other kids. So when you walk in a room and you see a stud just belt out a huge broad jump and your broad jump's not going to be very good, I can see not wanting to get up there and just fail.
Yeah.
I think that's a tendency of people in general. So you have to figure out a way to get them included where they don't feel like they're dragging the room down and they can grow.
That's a good point. And I'm thinking back to when I was training in this high school during the summer, and not a big school, like it's a small 1A, borderline, could be a 2A school here in Iowa, and got some athlete that's really fast and can jump and right. Like they really fast. And he said, hey, he goes and does a broad jump. One of those kids, yeah, he's got it. And then it's, I don't want to be the guy that goes next. And sure, that is in just a small town. But yeah, if your best athlete's broad jumping 100, but you can only broad jump 75, who wants to go after that best athlete anyways?
Yeah, and they have to learn that that's okay. That's what they are. They're not maybe the running back. Maybe they're a lineman. You're not going to meet that standard. And we've started getting stuff wrote down so that we can show athletes what a standard would be. You want to be an all-state linebacker. Here are some metrics from some previous all-state linebackers. So then they can be a little bit more in their comfort zone. Maybe they're jumping an 86. Previous all-state guys have been in the 90s. Now that's achievable. And it doesn't have to be 112 like the running back. It just needs to be a little bit better to catch up with the standard that was set before me.
What are your thoughts on seeing different athletes with the different multi-sports? Because in that small town, that's what I was used to, right? It was, hey, you got this athlete. Yeah, it's essentially in season and out of season. It wasn't like, oh, the football team's doing this. No, essentially you were doing either football or cross country. And then you go into wrestling season or basketball season. Then you're either doing volleyball or it's cross country at these different schools. How have you bucketed the training for things similar to that nature?
We usually, when we get them in, we'll look at some KPIs and see where they're at, because it depends where they're at in the season on how they're going to feel. A lot of those coaches may get them in early and then work on their conditioning during practice or different things like that. So you have to account for what the sport is doing. Then we can start tailoring to what needs they may need, and we can start adjusting. And then we can start looking at where they're at in the season. Early on in the season, we can attack some weaknesses, some strength, some things like that. But as the season goes, let's take football, for example, you're starting to move your way into a state playoff. Then we can.
Taking a quick break from the show to talk to you about one of our sponsors, PowerLift. I used PowerLift when I was at Harvard, Maryland, and the University of Iowa. I was also part of the staff that had the new weight room at the University of Iowa, the 32-rack, beautiful facility. I was a part of that. I also have Powerlift's equipment nowadays. Powerlift Strong, made here in the great state of Iowa, in the great country of the United States. They're able to work with you on any customizations that you need, logos, height, whatever it is, the limitations that you have. Their equipment is strong. The people there, they're very good people. Check them out in the link down below. And if you have any questions on how to work with them, reach out to us at service@strengthcoachnetwork.com, and we would be delighted to help.
Evaluate what the load needs to be and where we need to be, like on Vermeil's triangle, the hierarchy of athletic needs. Okay, we want you to be powerful. We want you to be fast. We want you to be fresh. Then we can start looking at what that takes. What needs need to be met to make that happen. That season ends, the new season begins. Let's say they roll into wrestling. Now that changes. So we're going to have to go back and start looking at capacity. Early in the season, we can start looking at strength. And then we work through with the athlete through the season till now the state meet's getting here, the district meet's getting here. Just like the football player, we need you explosive, we need you fast, we need you powerful. How do we get there? And then you just lay out the different seasons like they're independent of each other, and you just work up through the needs.
How have you found coaches that best implement that and understanding that philosophy, like sport coaches down to the athlete, and disseminating that information to get them all to understand that?
I think our football coach here does probably an incredible job of that. He just understands that a team that hits the playoffs with the least amount of injuries and ready to go is going to have the best chance of winning. So if I understood the question right, where I am, I would say our football coach is right there, probably the best of them all.
Then how do you then make that? How can you take that example and expand it to the other teams? And also then try to, for our listeners out there, they're like, man, I want to, okay, how can I do that with that? What he has with football? Like, I need to be able to get my coach to do the exact same thing. Like, what have been some of the keys that you've done with that?
I would say if I could find the answer to that, I'd be more than happy to give it to you. I don't know why that is, but not everybody is going to buy into that idea. And how they were coached, what they deem successful in their formative years seems to be a hard thing to buck. Yeah. And if they're a conditioning based coach that's grind, that's how they were coached. That's how they knew. They may be like that the rest of their life. And then if they have a little success on that, that really cements that idea.
Have you found that one of the best ways to work within that is to ask the coach, hey, why? Like, why is this important to you? Like, why? Who were some of your mentors? And when you do things like that, it allows the coach to explain, and you have a better understanding of why they are that way, and then it is a little bit easier to work together.
Okay, so we'll differentiate a little bit what I have going on here because we didn't talk a whole lot about it. I'm not as involved. I'm not at the school. What we have done is we created a free facility for athletes in our area. It costs them no money. They come out here, they train, we work through them the best we can. A lot of those lines of communication with coaches, I don't have. Now, I do have coaches come out here, watch, ask questions. Why are you doing this? That, and what you said is exactly true. When you sit down with them, what is your priority? What are you wanting out of this? That does open up a lot of communication, and you are able to make some changes in good directions. And then I might change the way I think about a few things too. It just depends. But yes, the coaches that come out here and we're able to talk about what they want for the season, that's the path that I found is the most effective.
Will you dive into the exact specifics of that situation that you guys have with that free facility? Because I'm sure a lot of our listeners are like, wow, that sounds interesting.
Okay. I don't know how it took off, but there around COVID, all the gyms were shutting. We had talked about it a little bit prior to that, me and my wife. High school kids, they're on a limited budget around here. For a lot of them they're footing their own bills.
Really?
I called a few gyms. Hey, what would you charge for a high school membership? They wanted the same price as an adult membership. And I remember what it was like to grow up and not have any money. So I'm like, man, that just isn't great. I'd set on that idea for a while. COVID hit, everything shut down. And I had got out of old weights that I had. And then I had bought an Olympic set. And it was like the last one in the city. I bought it probably April 3rd of 2020. I don't know how I was lucky enough to get that set, but I was. After that, you might get on a Facebook marketplace or something like that, but there were no weights to be had. So we set that up, and I was riding Colts at the time. We set that up in the arena of the barn, and we set up a platform. I had a few athletes come out. We started right there with 2 to 3 athletes. Every night we'd pick all the weights up so I could ride colts in the evening. And that's how we started. Then we moved from there. We moved across the alley of the barn and we built a little corner platform. That was the deal. That's only going to last so long in Missouri. It's going to get cold. And so we had talked about adding on to the barn, coming out with a lean, a 20-foot lean, and then make it the length of the barn, so 60 foot. So we'd have 20 by 60 enclosed. And as hard as I try to be faithful, sometimes you are, sometimes you're not. So I prayed about it a little bit, and I said, if this is what you want, the money's got to show up. I don't care how it shows up, but it needs to show up. And I think I worked 7/12s for 3 months.
Oh, wow.
And so what had happened, I'd finally got some days off around Thanksgiving. And then me and my father-in-law roughed it in, hung the sheetrock, finally got the gym enclosed, started getting athletes in. And that's how it started. And me and my wife had multiple talks about it. We put off building a house. We talked about building a house at that time. We're like, you know what? Let's try this. Seems to be the direction that we need to head. And then that turned from 3 athletes to 5 athletes to 12 athletes to, I couldn't even tell you how many there are now. I haven't counted them in so long, but summer gets really crazy. And once they hit the season, it mellows out a little bit, but you're working through a lot of athletes during the summer. And we've kept it free this long. Now the equipment's not going to be everything they would have at a gym they'd pay a membership for, but we just make it happen.
What's been one of the most fulfilling parts about that whole process?
Seeing kids hit their dreams.
A dream of not, and based off the way you said it, it's not, oh, hey, they lifted this weight. It's they went to that Oregon State or they went to those different schools.
Whatever that may be. It may not be that big. It may be they just wanted to start. I've had a lot of kids that haven't played football and they come in here and they're like a junior or going into their senior year and they're like, I want to try to play football, but I don't want to ride the bench the whole year. So we set out on a plan, and that may be their dream, just to see the field, just to play some varsity football. Another kid, the one we talked about earlier that was talking to Oregon State, he went to Maryville. He was an All-American last year wrestler over in St. Louis. Now, as he got away and got into college, I have less influence on that, and he did a lot of that on his own. But you got to be a part of that process. You got to live out that journey with him. And there's nothing more fulfilling than an athlete inviting you to graduation.
Ooh,
those things, you helped them, whatever that may be, you helped them.
So you saying that about being invited to graduation like that, being in this private sector world that I'm in too, like being able to have influence with kids. And there's a group of these 3 kids, they're all brothers. 2 are twins. One's the oldest, and helping this one, trying to figure out where he wants to go to school, or another kicker who graduated early and helping get him ready for college, or a sophomore as he, like when you get involved with the family and you can really be a part of who they are and truly see that development, like our listeners out there understand how powerful and fun that is. Cause sometimes maybe you're not able to do that in college or even in the high school setting. Like you really get ingrained with the family. And yeah, I can only imagine like going to a graduation, how cool that is.
And then when it really dawned on me is I think it was my youngest daughter's graduation.
What's up, y'all? Taking a quick break from the show to talk to you about another one of our sponsors, Vitruve. I've been utilizing Vitruve for a while now, and I absolutely love the convenience of this app. The encoder is at a price that you cannot beat compared to the competitors. Also, I don't personally like the camera apps. I've known that they continue to break down, and I really enjoy having this encoder attached directly to the bar. Vitruve does that. Not only does it do that, but it'll show me velocity loss during the set, shows me average velocity, all of it right within the app. Not only that, for the app on the individual athlete, there's a Vitruve Teams app where now as the coach, I can see all the results from my athletes. I can API that into my TeamBuildr, and now everything that I'm trying to do, get better competition, better intent in the weight room, I am able to do with Vitruve. If you want more information about them, click the link down below, or you can ask us questions directly at service@strengthcoachnetwork.com, and we would love to answer those questions for you.
We were in the audience watching, and then the seniors get to pick who gives them their diploma. So what happened was one teacher probably give out 15, 17 diplomas. And you're watching one teacher give out all these diplomas, and I'm sitting there thinking raises ought to be based on how many diplomas you give out. Because if the kid's picking you, you're having an influence on their life. And if you're giving out 17 diplomas, the impact you've had on that many students has to be worth something.
Yes.
And that's when I started realizing how big of an honor it is when parents and families do invite you to these things.
Yeah. My wife was like, man, you're all excited that we're going to their football games on a Friday night. Like, to go to see that high school graduation where it's like all that culmination, and because kid coming into your gym, just training, like you said, hey, I want to just play on the field, and to see that happen, gosh, that's got to be a good feeling. Where do you then want to see it in the next couple of years as you start projecting? Like, all right, in 5 years down the road, it's 2030. What does it look like now?
Hopefully the credibility and the success that these athletes have had carries over to more communities around. There's smaller communities around that are in the same boat we are, and whether they know they have access to this place, which we've tried to make it available, whether they know that or they want to make the trip. I think when you start seeing kids make a 30, 35-minute trip, 40-minute trip, passing other places to come here, that would be the overall goal, is you've created something that's worth their time to get here, because
that's
they know
super
that's
cool.
make a difference.
When that does happen, like we had a kid who, man, I forget where he was. I forget the exact town that he was driving from. And I'm like, hold on, wait a minute. You drove from there here to train? He's like, yeah, I know it's really, I was just like, wow. Shout out to Tucker and what he was able to build, the staff that I get to be a part of and what they built. To have people, when they choose to come train with you, that's the other part of it. It's not the exact same as in the high school or college where it's, oh yeah, I have to. Like they won't take it for granted like that.
To me, that's a measure of success when you open the gym door and kids in there waiting on you when they could have done anything else. It's not mandatory. It's their own time. They schedule their own time. That is successful.
What are the biggest pressures that you've seen high school kids have? And then how can us strength and conditioning coaches, in whatever capacity we have, best help and best serve them?
The overall biggest stressor that I've seen on them is that they have to have it figured out, whatever that may be, whether life, where they're going to go to work, where they're going to go to college, this big, huge plan of their life, that stresses them out way more than we can imagine. We were there once too. In fourth grade, they're already asking you what you want to be when you grow up. You're supposed to have your whole life mapped out by the time you're in high school. And then things happen and you find out you don't like this, or you don't like that, or this fell through, whatever the case may be. I think we put in a huge amount of pressure on them to know. And then now they have to step out into a world that's changed so much. What's a car going to cost them to get to college? What's a house going to cost when they get out? Where are they going to live? How are they going to afford all these things? And it just compounds. And then now you've got a 17, 18-year-old kid that's just overwhelmed by things that haven't even happened yet.
It's funny you say that, because there'll be times where I'll be trying to break the ice and be like, hey, let's just talk. We don't have to only talk about training, because when you get an athlete that will talk with you about more things, that's when you have the real sweet spot and you get better training. And so if I'm like, hey, you're near, oh, what grade you in? Oh, what do you want to do? And if they say, I don't know, I instantly follow with, you're not supposed to. Like, I have my undergraduate degree in criminal justice. I'm not using it. Like, it took me until I was 21 to know what like I really wanted to do and what my real love was. And I tell them that story to make them, like you said, yeah, like you're not supposed to know. You're young. You're supposed to just figure it out. And there are other kids that are like, I want to do this. I want to do this. I'm going to go to school for this. This is my plan of how I want to get there, because I want to learn. And I commend them. I'm like, man, you're 16 years old and you want to go and study this. You want to learn it at this school because this is what your passion is. I think that's just incredible. And the ability to try to speak life into that for those kids is powerful.
That's exactly right. And if you can build those side conversations that doesn't have to do with training, you're going to get a lot farther. And then as far as sports related, strength conditioning related, as the season goes on, big games will stress them out. Scouts, if they're not used to a scout, they're watching them. You have to talk through that. If they're going to be a state champion or they're playing for a state championship, that pressure really mounts, and you have to figure out if training's worth it that day or just chilling out and doing something totally different's worth it. There's been a lot of times. Or
even if it's, let's get into the playoffs for the first time in a while.
Exactly. All of that has a huge amount of stress that piles up. And then as a strength conditioning coach, you have to decide if you're going to get anything out of that training, if it's going to help, or where I am, if there's something more fun you can do to break the ice and be like, hey, man, let's just do this. And then we'll get back to training tomorrow. I've seen that be effective.
What are some of the things that you think are helping push our field of strength and conditioning forward that have taken place in the last couple of years?
I think the way we track things, you can't lie to athletes anymore and say, I know your 40 isn't what it was, but I can attest that you're better. As we've added more metrics and they've become more affordable, now that's totally changed the way we train because they have a timer there. They can see it, the way they jump. They know their progress. Now you have more athlete buy-in because it's just not a coach telling them how awesome they are. They're starting to ask questions. They're starting to try to figure out how to move the dial themselves because it's been gamified to a certain extent.
Flip side of that, what are some things that you're like, man, I wish the field of strength and conditioning, we weren't doing this or we weren't having this like conversation or whatnot? How can we avoid that to make sure that we're pushing the field forward?
Now that's going to be debatable and anybody that listens will agree or disagree, but I think we get stuck in these rabbit holes that this is the only way and you become a disciple of whatever that is, whether that be a conjugate or a West Side or a VBT or whatever that's out there. And you become so locked into your path that it creates an issue on growth, possibly. You've shut yourself off to what may help because you don't believe in that. It works. All of it works. So be a little more open and maybe a few less arguments on Twitter on stuff that doesn't even matter.
What got you into coaching? What like made you want to do strength and conditioning? What was your why? For me, it was my former offensive line coach. He was the one that got me bigger, stronger, faster when I was like, hey, I played as a freshman, but I know it'll be easier if I'm bigger, stronger, faster, and more in all the things. Like, what was your why?
All right. I talk about this a little bit, and let me see here. Something just popped up. Let me get it close so I can see you. Okay. So I always wanted to do horses. I always wanted to ride cow horses. That was my goal. That was my dream. I've talked about it a lot. Anybody listening will definitely understand that. Life happened. My daughters grew up. They weren't needing me to take them to practice. They weren't needing the things that me and my wife had provided. They were getting pretty independent. I found myself getting home from work and getting a little lazy and getting a little out of shape. I decided that I had to find a way to get myself into shape. I started doing that, and then I'm a nerd. I research so much stuff, and I keep so many books, and I keep so many notes. Then going through that, I started figuring out that, hey, some of this stuff may not be that difficult. What if I could help another kid? What if I could help somebody that wanted help? I didn't really want to be in the personal training side of it. That wasn't what I was looking at, but my kids were still in high school, and I was able to help them and some of their friends, and I found out that I really liked it. I don't know that I'm a pure meathead. I like a lot of aspects of it, but being able to help somebody do what they want to do probably really drew me in. And then I was able to take what maybe they weren't getting or take some information they weren't understanding, break it down, and then help them develop how they wanted to. And that's really what started it. I always thought I wanted to coach. I wasn't very good at it in the beginning. I had to mature quite a bit and figure out what athletes really needed and not what I needed. And once that all met, I think I found something that I really could enjoy.
How do you talked about the family? How do you recommend strength coaches out there try to balance that duality of being a family man and having your priorities straight, but also still doing a really good job serving your athletes?
That is a very difficult question, and that goes clear back to horses. I did not do a good job for a long time. When I got home from work, I was saddling horses. It didn't matter what was going on. It didn't matter what event was taking place, what everybody wanted to do. I wanted to ride horses, and that's what I was going to do. And through that, I was able to see that, hey, this isn't going to be conducive to a long-term strategy. And now, granted, it took a very long time to get that figured out. And then now, as I moved into it, there's a lot of times we do miss some stuff because we're working with athletes. But I've created a lot better balance of scheduling. Hey, tonight I need to move. I need to adjust. I want to do this. We want to do that. Some could say I'm still not doing a great job, but there is an effort all the time to make that more time allowance for everybody involved. And I think that's helped tremendously.
Where do you see voodoo power going in the next couple of years as you continue to push forward and do more. And like you said, hey, we started a little bit here and then we did that. Like, where's it going to go outside of, it's going to expand bigger and there will be other people coming, but is it, we want to put a turf in here, or we want to do, what are some of the logistical X's and O's that you're big picture dreaming about?
So that's a good question. And it's going to be very tough if it would ever come to fruition. But I have the barn that I always rode colts in. I've backed off riding the colts, which I still love. Cowboy culture, everything about it, the hackamores, the long riatas. I love all that stuff. But with the direction and the path we're on now, we've actually contemplated the big barn, which is a 40 by 60. And then it's got another 20-foot lean on it with stalls on it. All that going away. It's even a little bit hard to say because you're just closing a chapter of your life maybe, but cleaning that out, concreting the floors, insulating it, turning that into the future. And that would give us so much room to do what we need to do. But at that point, can we still keep it free? I don't know. That's not something I'm even looking at yet. It's just a far off idea of what could take place.
Amen. I want to thank you for taking time to talk with us about what you do. It's a super unique situation where shout out to you for being able to do that for kids, like, and come and have the ability to train for free with somebody that cares about what they're going to do, because we both know that there's not always the ability to do that, where maybe it's the gym's not there, but it could be an Anytime Fitness or something where they can't lift weights and let the things drop on the ground, or have somebody that's going to supervise their training rather than just say, hey, go get a good VMO quad pump, bro.
That's something I've been very blessed with, and I'm glad that we are able to do it.
No, that's shout out to you for being able to do that. Thank you for coming on and talking with us, and you have a great rest of your day.
Man, you too. Thank you.
Thanks for watching that video. If you enjoyed it, click right here for videos just like that, and make sure you click here to subscribe to our channel. Have a great rest of your day.